I'm excited to interview Gail Becker. Gail Becker is the founder of Caulipower. It's a cauliflower crust pizza, and in just 8 years, she took the company to over $100 million in sales. So, welcome, Gail. Okay, so let's start with setting the foundation. How do you go from working in corporate America to becoming an entrepreneur, and 8 years later, you have a company that does over $100 million in sales?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's probably a little bit of crazy. So it was really the convergence of three things happening in my life at the same time. One was I was in corporate America, and I sort of worked my way up the top of the ladder and realized when I got there I didn't like the view very much. So I was very disenchanted, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do instead. My father had passed away, and my father was a very proud veteran. He was also a Holocaust survivor. I'm a first-generation American. And when he passed, something inside me really changed. And I just wanted to do something more meaningful with my life. I wanted to help people. I wanted to make the world better in some small way. But again, I still didn't know what that would be. And then finally, my two sons have celiac disease, and they were diagnosed at such a young age that there was no gluten-free food in the store. And so it gave me a really good perch from which to watch the industry evolve. And I began to notice how much junk the industry was putting in food in general, and specifically in gluten-free food. And I thought, well, someone's going to do something about it, like many entrepreneurs do. And we sort of wait around for someone to do that, and no one ever did. So I put all of those things in a proverbial blender, if you will, and what I came out with was, I know, I'm going to quit my job and start a company called Caulipower. And that's what I did in May of 2016, and we launched in February 2017.
That's incredible. So to get the business started, did you have to take outside money, or did you just invest your own capital?
So both. Initially, I self-funded the business. My father, he really did live the American dream. He came here with nothing, actually less than nothing, no money, no family, no language, and the boat. He fought in the Korean War, and the boat dropped him off in San Francisco, and that's where he began his life. He was an entrepreneur. He had a small business, but he bought his own home. And thanks to the San Francisco real estate market, when he passed, he left that home to me. And so I sold that house, and I put every last dime into Caulipower. And it's interesting. Still can't really figure out why I did that. It was almost like a calling, but I felt like the money was blessed in some way. I knew how hard he worked for it. I knew I couldn't mess it up. And so I used that money to start the business. I also maxed out all of my credit cards. I sold my personal belongings online. I gave up every sense of luxury, and I bootstrapped the business until September of 2017, when I had to take my first round of funding.
I want to ask you how much that house sold for.
The house sold for $1.4 million. And he bought it in 1972 for $62,000.
Yeah. Welcome to San Francisco.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so what was your first big win? So you make the crust in your kitchen. How does it then get into a store?
Well, there are lots of ways to start a business, and maybe even specifically a food business. A lot of people, make something in their kitchen, sort of perfect it, share it with their friends, sell it at the local farmer's market. That is a great way to start a business. That was absolutely not my way. I was a bit of an older entrepreneur. I figured, well, I don't have a lot of time to do this. So I made it one time, so cauliflower crust pizza was an idea hiding in plain sight. I didn't invent the concept. I made it one time. There were 569,000 recipes on the internet the day that I decided to make it. I made one. It was okay, not great in any way. And my son asked me if I was going to make it again a couple weeks later, and I said, there's no way. It took 90 minutes to make a pizza crust after I got home from a full day of work. But I'll find it for you, is what I said. And I looked everywhere, and I couldn't find it, and so that's when I decided to do it myself. But I would say that the decision was pretty easy and very difficult at the same time and incredibly hard. And it's like living life to the nth degree. Everything is, it's heartbreaking, it's gut-wrenching, it's hair-pulling, it's remarkable, it's soul-crushing, it's uplifting. It's like life to the nth degree, so.
What store carried your pizzas first?
So we started in 30 Whole Food stores in the SoPac region. They have this wonderful program. If there's any budding entrepreneurs out there, they have this wonderful program where you can sell your product to your local region. So I made these pizzas. You have to obviously pay a manufacturer to make them. So it was the world's most expensive pizzas. And I dropped them off. I couldn't even get a meeting. I dropped them off in a styrofoam cooler at the Whole Foods offices in Southern California, which is where I lived at the time. It was sort of like dropping your kids off at daycare, only worse. And about a week later, I got an email from the buyer there that said, we tried your pizzas, we love them, we want to bring you into 30 stores.
Did you freak out, run around screaming, celebrating?
Absolutely, yes, to all of that. Interestingly enough, life works in mysterious ways. As fate would have it, I happened to be in Washington, D.C. that day because a friend of mine was doing a conference on entrepreneurship at the White House, and she invited me to come along. And so I did, and I went to a Starbucks afterwards, and I'm pretty sure the management of that Starbucks still talks about the crazy woman who screamed in the middle of the day. And I bought the people around me lattes to celebrate. I don't know, it was crazy.
Love that. Okay, so you obviously have a good team around you to be so successful.
Yes.
So I'm curious what standards and characteristics that you have in place at your company to attract that type of talent.
You know, it's really interesting. I mean, let's face it, no one would have ever hired me to be the founder of Caulipower, right? I mean, I had zero food experience. I knew a bit about marketing. That's what my career was in. But I knew nothing about food other than I cooked it, bought it, and ate it like all of you. But I also had something inside me that really wanted to change and wanted to try something new and wanted to live the next phase of my life. And what we've done at Caulipower, which is one of my favorite things about our team, is we have people today, it's very different today than when we first started, but we have people today who come from the biggest global food brands that you can imagine, Kraft, Nestle, all of this. But we also have people like me who just wanted to start over. One of the best hires I have made at Caulipower is this woman who was a hairdresser. She didn't want to be a hairdresser anymore. And she came to me and she told me a story that was not too dissimilar from what I felt. And so something inside me said, hire that woman, and she's literally been one of the best hires I've ever made. So we have a nice balance of people who have years of experience and who also just really want to make a difference.
Do you have your standards listed out? And if so, like what are those? Like people that have a growth mindset or people with integrity?
Yes, yes. So obviously there has to be some kind of entrepreneurial spirit because, you know, even though we're a $100 million company in the world of food, you know, we're in a door with, you know, multi-billion dollar conglomerates. Anyone want to take a guess on how many frozen pizzas there are in America at any given point? There are 400. Yeah, it's a lot. And so it was really important to, have people that sort of have that experience, but also to have a good mix of people who just, want to be a disruptor. So really someone who is entrepreneurial, someone who is disruptive, someone who cares about the consumer. I always say, at big food, a lot of people, or in big corporate America, a lot of people bet against the consumer. They don't think that consumer is going to know any better. At Caulipower, we absolutely bet on the consumer. We absolutely believe that they do know better, and that's what we're banking on.
Okay, so kind of a side note here. You were in politics, right? You were part of the Clinton administration with Health and Human Services. Yep. And on this point of the consumers don't really know what they're eating, obviously, if you're watching politics, you know that RFK wants to make America healthy again. What type of challenges do you foresee him running up against with big food industry, or do you think this administration can make change?
Wow. I think I was just listening to something on the news on that. I absolutely think that there is room to improve. It's funny because my husband is from the UK. He comments all the time about how different the food is here than in Europe. How many ingredients are regulated out of the system in Europe, but are absolutely allowed in the system here. So do I think change will come? Absolutely. Do I think it will be slow? Absolutely. And, I think one of the things that changed that, quite frankly, was the pandemic. The pandemic was a really hard time for Caulipower and for other better-for-you foods because America took a hard turn to comfort food. Hard turn. And a lot of brands, the better for you brands really suffered because everybody was gravitating toward, all you can eat pepperoni pizza and, double stuffed mac and cheese. And so I think we were really on a great trajectory for, really educating consumers. It did halt a bit during the pandemic, but I'd like to think that we're headed back in that direction, and if change comes, that's going to be great for the industry and great for companies like Caulipower.
Why would companies want to put all that crap ingredients into their food? Does it last longer? Is it cheaper to make? Like, why do we have all this food coloring?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I always say, look, there are these big conglomerates. They spend hundreds of millions of dollars on R&D every year. Why in the hell did someone like me come up with cauliflower crust pizza? I mean, I'm just a consumer sitting in my home in Los Angeles thinking, hey, that's a good idea. Why didn't they? Well, they didn't because you almost have to be an outsider to challenge the system, to really disrupt the system. Frankly, to be so ignorant enough that
not knowing is your biggest blessing.
Right. Ignorance was my biggest blessing. So I think that is part of it. But when you look at the R&D divisions of a lot of these big companies, the corollary answer to your question, when you look at a lot of the R&D departments, R&D means making cheaper products. It means improving the bottom line. Now, all of those things that you mentioned absolutely makes a more cost-efficient product. And, at the end of the day, that's the name of the game. Particularly when you look at how inflation has impacted the industry, the cost of ingredients has skyrocketed. The cost of packaging has skyrocketed. I mean, food prices have been on the front page of the news for quite some time now. And so the industry has a couple of choices. You can make your food, you can do a price increase. You can make your food cheaper, Or you can, participate in something called shrinkflation, which is basically offering the same price for a smaller package. And sometimes consumers notice that, and sometimes they don't.
Yeah, it's a shame what some of these big companies, how they're advertising to consumers. Like the other day I was in the store and I saw it said, eggs from plants. It's like, what the? Eggs from plants? I turned around the carton of it and had, no kidding, 100 fake ingredients in it to make eggs from plants. I looked at your ingredients. You have less than 10, I think, ingredients in your pizza. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
And for the consumers of that product. So just to get back on track, I'm curious about your culture. How would you describe your culture?
I like to think that our culture is, one of the things that we really stress is innovation. And I don't mean innovation just in our food. Innovation in everything that we do, with the exception of finance, of course. That can't be too innovative of a department. But I just had an employee retire yesterday. And it was a very exciting and personal moment for me to think that someone is retiring from Caulipower. But she was in customer service, and she led our customers are our retailers, and she led customer service during the pandemic. And boy, can't imagine a tougher job at that time outside of healthcare than trying to manage a food company or a supply chain within a food company. And we had one of the best delivery rates in the industry. And I really credit her with doing that because of the culture that we fostered, because we encourage people to try new things. Maybe things that they did at their previous companies, maybe things they always wanted to do at their previous companies, but were never allowed to or never had the courage to really try and fail and to promote a culture where that's acceptable. It's not always going to work out, of course, but when it does, it's a game changer. And when you're a disruptor, particularly in an incredibly large and competitive industry, it can make all the difference.
Have you ever had a time, you've been in business 8 years, have you ever had a time that you had to reset the standard or reset the bar in your company?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. There were many times. So, boy, it's such a privilege to be the founder of Caulipower, and I'm so grateful to all of our consumers who helped us get where we are. But there have been many times when we almost went out of business. I mean, complete. We either ran out of money, we had a co-man try and steal our product, we had people, we had lawsuits, you name it. And I thought probably in the last 8 years on 5 separate occasions that we would be done. And that is a good reset. And I think just in general, what I have walked away from this experience with, because I thought I was going into the food business. What I really have opened my eyes to is it's really an investment business, a private equity business, a financial business. And there's some good comes with that and some not so good with that comes with that. But it really does come down to money. And you read all the time about this entrepreneur who raised, 80 million and 200 million, and isn't that great, and had that valuation. And what I decided during some of these hiccups that we had, and we're in a good place now, which is great. We obviously made it through. But you have to redefine success. And if you think about it in this country, why do we always define success by how much money you make? Why is it all about numbers? So as soon as I sort of thought, okay, I'm going to redefine success, by different metrics. How many people are we impacting? How many people are we helping to lead healthier lives? How many larger companies are we holding up to higher standards? How many children are we teaching that, better food, makes you feel better? As soon as you redefine what success looks like for any of us in whatever industry you're in, then it's a totally different game. And so, and that was really a gift. It was a hard lesson, but a really helpful one.
I'm sure you have mentored other entrepreneurs at this point. What do you think is your most impactful piece of advice to an entrepreneur?
I would say a couple things. I'd like to think that one of the most impactful things that I hope I do is not to someone who is already a self-declared entrepreneur, but to the person who's wondering if you want to take the leap. And maybe there's some of you in the room today, or someone in your lives, or someone back at home who is really sort of struggling on whether they should make the jump or not. And I always say that, I think it's very common for people to sort of wait for the right time. Wait for the right time. Oh, I'm going to know it. There's a sign, right? This is going to be the right time, or I'm going to wait for this, or I need this to happen, or whatever. So the newsflash is there's never a right time. There is never a good time to start a business. It's kind of like having kids, right? Never a good time to have kids, never a good time to start a business. So you just have to do it. And you have to bet on yourself. And what I love about that notion is, our kids, and in some cases grandkids, whatever, they're always watching. What a magnificent lesson to teach the young people in your life. You're never too old to bet on yourself. It's never too late to take a chance on yourself. If you don't, who is ever going to? And so if I can do that, and if I can also show that, hey, betting on a female founder in a female-led business is a good bet, and Caulipower helps prove that, I'm here for it.
Did you ever think that being a female helped, hurt, or just was neutral in business?
Hurt, 100%.
Really?
Oh, no question.
Like from what outside industry, or where did you experience that challenge?
Well, how long do we have here?
Okay.
What I would say is, so this is, I'm sure a lot of you in the audience know this, but women get 2% of VC funding dollars. 2%. Which means 98% go to male entrepreneurs, and 2% go to women. And it's really a vicious circle, because if you don't have the money, you can't start a business, or you certainly can't be successful. And raising money for Caulipower was really hard, way harder than it should have been, way harder than it should have been. So I self-funded until September of 2017. I went looking for money. I talked to 35 VCs. And by the way, we were already killing it in Whole Foods. We were already killing it in a number of other retailers. We already had the orders for Walmart. And we just needed the money to make the orders for Walmart that were going in October. And so after about 4 solid months of fundraising and 35 VCs, I got offers from 2. And that is from a company in market with proven success. And meanwhile, all these other entrepreneurs were getting money left and right, just based on concept, not even without any data. I will also say that there are very few women in manufacturing. So in the food ecosystem, I'm a manufacturer. There are not a lot of women in manufacturing, unfortunately, although it is certainly growing. And that's been really challenging too for entrepreneurs. So I will say to this, audience is that, if you want to see more veteran entrepreneurs, and who amongst us doesn't, you know what you should do? You should support veteran entrepreneurs and you should buy their products. If you'd like to see more female entrepreneurs, and I'd like to think who amongst us does it, then you should support female-founded businesses and buy their products. That is the power of the consumer. We decide which products are going to succeed and which products fail. I think people are really, one benefit that I think the world today has given us is people are very cognizant of who they're buying from. But we should be a lot more cognizant. We should absolutely be a lot more cognizant. It is the only way to change the system.
So Tony wants me to leave some room for questions here, so I just have like one or two questions. Sure. Reflecting back, what would you tell your 30-year-old self?
I would tell my 30-year-old self that I should have done it sooner.
How old were you when you started it?
I was 50.
That's awesome.
And I didn't have the courage. And my one regret is that my dad didn't get to, but he certainly is the reason it's here.
My last question, do you believe in legacy, or do you think you die, get your one-page obituary, and life goes on?
Oh my gosh. I hope everybody believes in some kind of legacy.
People that don't believe in legacy.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was raised, and again, to immigrant parents, but I was raised, my father, every single day of my life, every single day, the first thing he said when he woke up in the morning, God bless America. First thing he said, and he would look at me and he would say every day, Gail, do you know how lucky you are to be born in this country? And you know what? I didn't. I really didn't. Now I do. Because I don't think I could have started a company like Caulipower and disrupted the frozen $5 billion pizza industry in any other country but America. And so, yeah, I definitely believe in leaving the world better than we found it and hopefully helping others in some ways to do that.
Okay, it's Gail Becker. Do you guys have any questions?
Thank you.
Maybe could you talk a little bit about how you went through the process, and did you get any pushback on some of that, let's say, from the financial people?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good point. Look, at the end of the day, this is a business. Once you take money, people celebrate these huge, oh, I raised X amount of money, or the bigger number, the better. That's all money that you owe to someone, and that they owe to someone else, and you have to deliver. So yes, you can never worry about you can never ignore the financial success of a company. It's the reason we are, and if we weren't in a position to make money, we shouldn't be in business, and we wouldn't be in business, because it's just not sustainable. What I was speaking about is more on a personal level, because during those hard times at Caulipower, I really struggled. Honestly, this is a really tough thing to admit. I don't know if I knew then what I know now, I don't know if I would have done it again. That's hard. That's a really hard thing to say out loud. But as soon as I, in my mind, in my spirit, redefined how I look at this journey, whatever happens, the end is not written for Caulipower. I hope it has a happy ending, but who knows? But I already feel successful. And the reason I feel the most successful is because I took that very first step, which was the hardest. I gave up everything I knew. I gave up security. I gave up money. I gave up a lifestyle. I gave up everything I knew, and I tried. And that is how I define success. So whatever happens, I'm good. I'm really good. I'm helping people. I feel like this entire process has been a privilege. But at the end of the day, you gotta make money or you're just not gonna exist.
Gail, you are so passionate about veterans.
I am.
And I know that started with your dad.
Yeah.
What are some of the lessons that he ingrained in you, instilled in you, and that you witness in those who served our country now?
You know, it's funny because my dad, you know, he had a small business in San Francisco. He had a store. And I used to ring the cash register and sit on a stool in the store every weekend for $20 plus lunch. And I pretty much think that most everything I learned about business, I learned on that stool and very old cash register. And that was a lot of the things that he learned by being in the military. One, he always built relationships with people. And it's interesting because ultimately he ended up closing the store, but he would sell, this is ironic, he would sell food to hotels and restaurants around San Francisco, like dented cans of tomatoes or what have you. It was really like in the salvage business. But he would always talk to the busboy or like, you know, the guy who in the back was like opening the cans. He wanted to really understand people, what the people's needs were, and how he could help people. And the other thing that he taught me that I see in a lot of veterans that I interact with, which I think is probably the most important skill of being an entrepreneur, and that is he never lost his cool. Never. Even when, you know, there was a guy who came in once and to the store once, I remember, and he was having a diabetic reaction and everyone was sort of freaking out and he was on the floor like having some kind of attack and everyone was sort of freaking out and there were no cell phones then and no one really knew what to do. And my dad just took total control of the situation, ripped open a candy bar, fed it to him, held him, and you know, within minutes it was over. And I only realized later, particularly after working with some of the veteran entrepreneurs that I recently met through the Penn Fed Foundation, boy, that ability to handle when shit hits the fan, because it will, because that's all that happens when you're an entrepreneur, every single day. That is priceless. And I like to think he taught me some of that, and I definitely know he learned that from being in the military.
I think I saw another question over here in the back.
So Gail, for your journey, did you have any mentors along the way, or did you have to learn it all yourself?
It's a good question. You know, one mistake that I think a lot of entrepreneurs make is we think we need to have all the answers. Well, this is my business, and I founded this business, and it was my idea, and so I have to know all the answers. I think one of the benefits of age, or starting when you're a little bit older, is I've always felt really okay with what I don't know. Really okay. As a matter of fact, I thought that was going to be key to my success, right? Hire experts who knew the business and who could teach me. And that's really how I started in the beginning. I hired a bunch of consultants to teach me the business because I didn't know anything. And so was there one mentor? Probably not. Were there a lot of people who helped me along the way and who I was smart enough to listen to? You bet. And one thing I will say about the industry, which has been really amazing to me, there are a lot of buyers at the retailers that buy our products that you have to sell your product into for years, and then you have to sell your new product, and then you have to sell this SKU instead of that SKU. There are a lot of buyers who are actually rooting for David rather than Goliath. They want you to do well. I've had a lot of people hey, you don't want to do that. You want to do this instead. People who were guiding me and rooting for me and wanting Caulipower to win. That was mind-blowing and incredibly reassuring. And there's a lot of people like that who've helped me on the way. And I think the key is you just have to really have the confidence to know what you don't know and listen to people who do.
Blue shirt.
Yes to both. So we started in 30 Whole Food stores, and it took off like wildfire. Like wildfire. Couldn't keep it in stock. And again, the interesting thing about Caulipower was, we weren't just a frozen pizza. We created a category. There were no cauliflower crust pizzas, so retailers didn't really know how it was going to do. So particularly for Whole Foods in the beginning, they didn't know how much to order, so they didn't order very much. And it went like wildfire, and we grew pretty quickly from there. So we launched in February 2017. That year, which wasn't a full year, we did $5 million, which is pretty unheard of, from what I understand, for a new business. But we have obviously done a lot of things to help that. I talk about Caulipower everywhere I go, either in groups like this, or I have done a lot of media and so forth to get the word out, to really tell the story. People like to know the story about what they're buying, what they have on their homes. This is food you're putting in your body. What is the story behind it? How did it come to be? What am I giving to my family? And I feel an incredible weight and responsibility to make sure people know that story. And that has certainly helped. By the way, on that note, anyone who sees me and would like a free pizza coupon, I have lots of them with me, so please hunt me down and ask for one. But yeah, and because of the newness of the category, we did get a lot of media attention, and that certainly helped us grow.
Tony, you ready for us to wrap here? Thank you all for listening.
Thank you.
Gail Becker.
Thank you so much.